with the language comes the knowledge. And a lot of the elders say our language has a spirit. And we can't feel that spirit when we're in a classroom and we start writing it down. We're trying to use concepts that don't belong to us to try and recapture our language or to try and preserve it, and that isn't working. These camps are really important because that's how we learn. We're engaged, it's participatory, everybody's included, from little kids to old people. We're connecting with the land, that the spirit of the language comes out there. My name is Wanda Wilson. I am the president of the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre. Our project with the Canada 150 and Beyond, the Resilience and Respect project, was culture and language camps. We focused on that. We hosted 6 camps this year, and varying degrees of our involvement. Our first camp was Standing Buffalo Dakota Nation, and they focus on the buffalo, and it's almost like a science class. So they go through the entire process of the ceremonies before you take an animal's life, dressing the animal, skinning it and gutting it. And while they went through that, all the youth were exposed to every single part of the animal, what it's used for. That whole thing was just like a science class. And then from there they went to smoke the meat. They cleaned the hide. And of course the hide takes longer than the camp, so they used the last year's hide to scrape it and prepare it for preparing it for use. President Rump is the Nakota nation in southern Saskatchewan. And the Nakota language is the most at-risk linguistic group. There's less than 100 speakers in the world. So we decided to host a 5-day camp, and we were major, partners with the band in hosting the camps. And that camp was focused on the youth and predominantly the language, and there was approximately 100 participants. The most interesting thing about the camp was how they used traditional games to keep the children's interest. They built a sweat there, they put up teepees, and they went through all the teachings when they did that, which was amazing. And the most important thing I think about that camp was some of the stories that they heard from some of the elders, their traditional stories regarding their creation. Sweetgrass had a culture camp, and they were predominantly focused on culture. So we assisted that camp with their traditional giveaway ceremony at the end of the entire camp. Now they did all kinds of various kinds of activities there that were all in language was incorporated to everything there. They did sweat lodge ceremony, they smoked meat, they made crafts with the kids, they crushed berries, they picked sweetgrass, they went to the sliding hill and heard those stories. The other camp we were involved in was Wahpeton Culture Camp, Wahpeton Dakota Nation. And we were quite heavily involved in the planning of that. We were heavily involved in executing. We had staff there through the whole camp.
This one, the Wahpeton camp, it has already been a special time. This one seems to be a little bit more cultural focus with some language pieces. Mm-hmm. But yesterday it was nice. What they did is they held a mini powwow. But it was amazing because all the older people in the community basically led the children in how a powwow goes. And then they would show them, like, this is how grand entry works. This is usually the order of how powwow dances are done. And so they would all get to dance their own category, and none of them were older than 17 years old, it seemed. So that was pretty amazing. And just today is a little bit different, and I like that they have different activities going on. Of course, there's, I think that's moose meat, I'm not entirely sure. Moose meat, smoking, and just having the teepees around. And this is the second year that they have done this one, and you can just see again that it's the start of something positive, because they had said that the number of people that attended last year to this year has already increased, and so I don't think that they'll show any signs of slowing down this camp either, so it's really great.
The other camp we were heavily involved with was the File Hills Qu'Appelle Tribal Council's Great Plains Culture and Language Gathering, held in September in conjunction with their Treaty 4. Now that camp was unique and interesting because they were able to showcase and address all their 5 linguistic groups, and in all areas, right from the beginning pipe ceremonies to the feasts, they were heavily focused on the language.
My name's Corey General, and I'm one of the lead organizers for the Great Plains Culture and Language Gathering here in Fort Qu'Appelle, held during Treaty 4. How it come to be was the File Hills Qu'Appelle Tribal Council, of which I'm the communications specialist. We went all over for about the past 2 years to all of our member nations, our 11 member nations here in the Treaty 4 territory. And one of the things that had come out of all of our consultations, all of our discussions, culture and language. Culture and language, how important that is to our nationhood, just how important that is to nation building. It is the foundation of who we are as Indigenous nations. And what I mean by that is that every nation has a specific land, language, culture, and foods. One of the things that we really wanted to do with the gathering was to wake up the spirit, not only wake up the spirit, but to strengthen the spirit. Because us in the South here, we have a strong grasp on our culture. And if we are to proceed with nationhood, and if we are to proceed with nation building, we have to put our cultures and languages first and foremost. We have to wake that up, and we have to strengthen that.
In my opinion, this has been the best thing that has ever happened to the Treaty 4 activities in 31 years. And there are communities here in this province within this tribal council that have 0 language speakers. So it's not only threatened, generally it's happening specifically in certain communities, and I'm very alarmed by that. So to have a culture and language conference like this, to bring all the old people together that are knowledgeable and good teachers, and bring them together with young people, that's a very great thing.
James Smith was the last camp we were involved in, and that camp was predominantly culture. They had quite a few people there. There was over 200 attendees, and that was a Cree camp. They had 5 sweats running. And I think the most important thing about all these camps, besides just being focused on culture and language, is the fact that there's so much loss of the language and loss of the culture that it really impacts communities in ways that people don't even understand. These camps are ways of reconnecting not only with the land, but with each other. Some of my teachings are, at least if you're an urban person, at least once a year go to the land and lay on the ground and connect with your mother. It's very humbling when you go out there and you participate in something like that. You feel very small in terms of the size of the universe and what we can be. And I can understand more, not completely, but more of how our ancestors felt when they thought about where we might be in the future and what could they do at that time to preserve the language and the culture. And that's how we need to think now. And the only way you can get that is by going out there and reconnecting with the natural world.